Testing. All right. Let's see. Everyone settled down now? Oh, I like that. I like having control of this room. My name is Anika Wilson. I'm a professor of African and African Diaspora Studies. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to our celebration of 55 years of Black reality at UWM. Yay! Cue applause. Since our founding, the Department of African and African Diaspora Studies, AADS, has instructed thousands upon thousands of students, many of whom have literally taken our course entitled Black Reality, a Survey of African American Society. But no matter whether students took that particular course, all of our courses affirm the experiences, perspectives, and contributions of people of Africa and the African diaspora. In this time of budget cuts, shrinking departments, shifting university priorities, our department affirms our continuing commitment to serve the students of UWM and the Milwaukee community at large. We work to ensure that every student who comes to UWM has the opportunity to expand their base of knowledge through critical inquiry into the lives, knowledge systems, social structures, and creative endeavors of Black peoples here and around the globe. What students learn in our classrooms shapes the way they engage the world throughout their lives. So to mark this occasion, we welcome former and current students, our keynote speaker, Biondi, a scholar of Black Studies, and the Ko-Thi Dance Company. We begin with some remarks from a recent graduate of UWM, David Crowley, who is the Milwaukee County Executive. So my brief introduction, in May of 2020, nothing happened interesting that year. David Crowley became the youngest county executive in the history of Milwaukee and the first Black leader elected to serve that particular role. On April 2nd, 2024, County Executive Crowley was re-elected to a second term, and as a lifelong Milwaukee resident, David Crowley attended the Bayview High School and recently earned his bachelor's degree from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. He lives in Milwaukee with his wife, Erica, and their 3 daughters, and he recently took some of our classes in AADS. So please welcome David Crowley.
Good afternoon. Y'all looking good? I can hear my professor, Dr. Biko Baker, out here, and it is good to be back at UWM. This is actually my first time back on campus since graduating, so I appreciate this opportunity. It is absolutely an honor to be back on campus, particularly as an alumni, to celebrate 55 years of the Department of African and African Diaspora Studies right here at UWM. Now, this department has been a pillar of scholarship, empowerment, and truth-telling, not only for this campus, but let's be honest, for our entire community. It helps us share our stories, and it also inspires the next generation of leaders. And as a former student who took a course in this department, I can say firsthand that the lessons taught here go far beyond the classroom. And as the first African-American county executive elected to this office, I carry these teachings every day through the work that I do. Black and African diaspora history and studies shape how we understand our history, our policy, and the world around us. And Black history is American history, which means that it is the foundation of so much of our country's growth, our culture, and our success. And yet we are living in a time where the very existence of programs like this are being questioned. And in some places right here in America, banned. In our lifetime, I think about my 3 daughters, in my daughter's lifetime, we're seeing the teaching of Black history being challenged at the national and local levels. But we know that those who don't learn our history are bound to repeat it. And so we're seeing it happen right before our eyes. But here in Milwaukee County, we know that our future depends on the, excuse me, on an honest reckoning with our past and our commitment to equity to do exactly that. And so I want to let you all know that we are doubling down on our commitment. For those who may not know, our vision at Milwaukee County is that by achieving racial equity, we can become the healthiest county in the state of Wisconsin. And I think it's extremely important that folks understand that we're going to stay true to our commitment, because we have to make sure that we're uplifting historically marginalized communities and making sure that we focus on issues like housing, economic opportunities, to public health and criminal justice reform, as well as reintegration. Because I truly believe that the work of this particular department has always been vital, and it is just as necessary today as it was 55 years ago. And so I want to say this to you all before I leave this podium, is that we got to fight on our hands. We got to fight here locally, we got to fight here across our state, and we got to fight across this country. Because when we're talking about equity, we're not just talking about black folks. We're not just talking about Hispanic folks. We're talking about women. We're talking about our LGBTQ plus community. We're talking about age. We're talking about all these things that make us who we are every single day. And so it's extremely important that when we talk about equity, when we talk about DEI, people understand that that E actually stands for everybody. And that's extremely important. And so I want to say thank you to the faculty, to the students, to the alumni for keeping this legacy alive. Keep sharing your stories, keep sharing your truth, because that's the only way that we stay ahead, that we get ahead and make sure that our entire country and people are moving forward. And that's what it's going to take, not only to make Milwaukee stronger, but to make our nation stronger. And so to the AADS program, congratulations on reaching 55 years, and just know that we're going to have a fight to make sure that we continue to last another 55. And let's be in this together, y'all. Thank y'all for this opportunity.
Thank you to David Crowley, who I'm sure is scheduled down to the 30 seconds. And so we're glad you had a chance to stop by for us. Next, I would like to welcome to the stage our Chancellor. Hold on. The Chancellor of UWM, Mark Money. In 2014, Mark Money became the 9th Chancellor of the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. He was a first-generation college graduate. Maybe some of you in this room are also in a similar position. He earned his bachelor's degree in organizational management from Central Washington University when he was a chef, food, and beverage director and leader in hospitality operations. And he went on to earn a master's in business administration from Idaho State University, and then a PhD in organizational behavior and organization theory from Washington State University. Please welcome Chancellor Money.
Well, I'm just thrilled to be able to address you today, to have audience with the wonderful speakers that you have on the program, and certainly very proud of our graduate, County Executive David Crowley. Was he inspiring? Absolutely, and I hope that he continues to have the successes that he has had as county executive. But also, could we see him in higher office? Let's hear it. Let's hear it for, yes, yes. Well, thank you, Professor Wilson, for this program, and Professor Winkler for helping organize and coordinate the events and activities, not just of today, but what you've been doing in the program. I would like to acknowledge, if there are any other elected officials here today, thank you for joining us, and certainly all of you in the audience. It's vitally important. It is wonderful to be able to reflect just for a moment. If you were not at County Executive Crowley's graduation, I encourage you to look at it. I believe it's on YouTube. It's pretty widely available, and he delivered a dynamite speech. The themes that he just talked about with us today were similar to some of the things, and you could hear a pin drop in that room, and there were probably between 9,000 and 9,500 individuals hearing our county executive as a proud Panther talking about the issues that are important. And one of the things that I'm critically supportive of in so many different ways, and why we work with so many different audiences across our community, is around the gaps that we have, the disparities that we have in this community, and how I believe firmly that education is the pillar and it's the great equalizer in so many different ways. So that's why I'm so proud to be in the role that I've been in and be at UWM for 36 years, to do all that we can to continue to try to open doors and create social mobility through education. My colleagues at the Zilber College of Public Health talk often about 5 determinants of public health, and they reflect some of the things that County Executive just spoke about. But I continue to have a little bit of fun arguing with them and say that the most fundamental is education. And I see that because of the differences that we see when individuals do not have access to early childhood education in terms of reading scores right out of the gates in kindergarten. I see it continue in 3rd and 8th grade scores, and it continues into college. And that's why we've put a lot of our efforts into, whether it's Moonshot for Equity or M-Cubed, working with the pipeline of students from this area to really increase their success. And over the 10 years that we've been doing this, if you were able to hear, and Channel 58 covered this, again, it's available online, from an anniversary to have students from Milwaukee Public Schools talking story after story about how they are now accepted into college. One student, 18 colleges, 4 of them, free ride. And just the testimony after testimony. This is what happens when we work together. It's so vitally important. So today, we're here to celebrate a vitally important anniversary, the 55th anniversary of UWM's African and African Diaspora Studies program. This was one of the very first programs of its kind in the nation, and it grew out of a series of civil rights struggles that took place in Milwaukee and across the nation throughout the 50s, 60s, and 70s. These were formative years, and they're easily forgotten. Most of you were not born in those days. I can go back to the 50s because I was born in the 50s, but I can tell you, late 50s, okay, so late 50s, and I don't remember them, but certainly the 60s and 70s I was around for. But I encourage you, and this is the power of knowledge and what a university does. We not only create knowledge, but we disseminate it, and that's unusual. A lot of educational institutions take as repositories, but we create it. But we also store it, and we've got an incredible library. And I encourage you to spend some time in our library and look at the collection on the March on Milwaukee. This is online. You don't have to even go there. You can look online to get a sense of what was happening in our city at the time, the important roots of the program that we're here to celebrate today. So out of these struggles, there came a shift, and it wasn't overnight. It took a lot of work. It was a gradual shift. People in academia, particularly at UWM, began to recognize that we need to have more perspectives, and they need to be taught differently and by different people. You can't just have a single unitary perspective. So this program that began in 1970, and now we have an undergraduate as well as master's degree and doctoral program in African and African diaspora studies. Our progress is thanks to our tireless faculty and staff and many of my predecessors and our predecessors. They've built this program not just for the benefit of our black students, but for all students, and that's what's so important. So there are stories and experiences that are relevant for students of every background because we can all learn from each other. And so in regard to the concerns that you may have related to the federal directives that our county executive was alluding to, please know a few things. At the leadership level, we are working hard every day. We're spending a lot of time with our government relations folks. You will see forthcoming an advocacy piece that'll be in the Journal Sentinel from me. There's a number of things that we're signing and asking our congressional panel and congressional folks to continue to try to support. We're working to make sense, first of all, of the executive orders. There's a lot of different interpretations. We don't know yet. We also will communicate what we know when we know, and I urge everyone to continue to focus on what is our purpose, what is our mission, and those things will remain. We are the only university in the system in the state of Wisconsin that has the distinct purpose to serve different audiences and to do it well. We call this an access mission. Individuals and populations that otherwise wouldn't have access to higher education, but we're also designated as in our select mission as a research university, again, it comes back to creating and disseminating knowledge. That's what we're here for. We want to provide students of all backgrounds with the opportunity to pursue higher education and to produce life-changing research as, yes, again, an R1 institution. And that goes for all of us. I'd ask us all to keep doing what we're doing. The work of this program, the work that we're doing at UWM, is vitally important, and it's good work. It enriches the lives of so many students, and it is, as I said before, an inflection point, a game changer, and vitally necessary. So thank you for being here today and helping us celebrate. Dr. Wilson, back to you.
Thank you, Chancellor Moni, and thank you again for the support for our department and our program. Programs, plural. Now I have the honor to welcome Dr. Martha Biondi, our keynote speaker. Martha Biondi is a member of the Northwestern University Department of, I think you said the name change, of Black Studies is currently the name. We always keep shifting as time goes on. She specializes in 20th century African American history and is the author of To Stand and Fight, The Struggles for Civil Rights in Post-War New York City, published by the Harvard University Press, which was awarded the Thomas J. Wilson Prize as Best First Book of the Year. In 2012, the University of California Press published her book, The Black Revolution on Campus, an account of the nationwide Black student movement of the late 1960s and the early Black studies movements of the 1970s. Again, our department coming out of these movements. Her new book, which is coming out this summer, is We Are Internationalists, Prexy Nesbitt and the Fight for African Liberation. Did I get that right? It's a little scrawl here. So again, welcome Martha Biondi.
Good afternoon. It's wonderful to see such a great turnout. I want to just begin by congratulating the Department of African and African Diaspora Studies, congratulating you on your 55 years at this institution. I am very pleased to join you today to offer some remarks about the place of Black studies in American life. I'm filling in for my colleague, Mary Patillo, who was unfortunately unable to make it today. I want to thank all the organizers of this event for making this switch smooth and easy. Unfortunately, I need to begin on a somber note. We're living in a time when not just Black studies, but higher education itself is under attack. Our embrace of science, facts, disagreement, inquiry, curiosity, intellectual freedom, and yes, diversity, equity, and inclusion has made us a target for an organized right wing that disdains these attributes. Such a crisis requires our resolve. We in the university need to be fearless and vigorously defend our principles and core mission. We are justly proud of our mission and our accomplishments and need to stand tall to defend them. As scholars of fascism have stressed, this is not a time to obey and advance. In my remarks today, I'll describe how Black studies was intensely controversial at its creation and how it has become so yet again, both in the proxy war on critical race theory, or CRT, and in the attacks on diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, also known as DEI. But in addition, I'll highlight the extraordinary contributions of Black studies to US higher education and American scholarly production. Black studies is threatening to some precisely because it has been both popular and influential. It broadens young people's minds and pushes them to ask bold questions about our society and culture. Moreover, our scholarship has helped to tell a different story of the United States, one that is at once more inclusive and more complex, but at the same time, one which rejects easy myth-making or romanticizing. For the sake of clarity, I'll use Black studies to signify an interdisciplinary academic field known variously as African American studies, Africana studies, African diaspora studies, and so forth. In 2021, my department actually changed its name from African American Studies to Black Studies, seeing this term as more accurately describing our teaching and scholarship, which exceeds the United States and the Americas more broadly. We like the new name because it's global and unapologetic. It reads as perhaps more resistant, while African American Studies tilted toward respectability and inclusion. Black Studies began its modern life in the academy over 50 years ago. For more than 50 years, the study of the culture, politics, and history of Black people has been present in one form or another in our country's colleges and universities. It came into being because of an uprising of Black students on campuses nationwide. While the civil rights movement was driven by Black students fighting to end Jim Crow segregation at lunch counters, movie theaters, swimming pools, and bus stations in towns across the South and North and West, by the end of the 60s, a new cohort of Black students made the campus the terrain of protest and demanded that universities and colleges offer classes that reflected their lives and histories, as well as Black faculty to teach them. Of course, there had been Black history and teaching about the culture and lives of Black people in historically Black colleges and universities prior to the liberation movement of the 1960s. But in the 1960s, for many Black students, Black Studies was viewed as a political tool to educate Black people about their own history, politics, and culture, in part to strengthen ongoing struggles in brown and Black communities. A key point is that Black Studies and the various ethnic studies programs that came in its wake were, at their inception, political and insurgent. And it was that origin story in a time of insurgency and urban rebellion across the country that made Black Studies controversial. Many in American life derided it as an overly emotional intrusion into an academic landscape ostensibly committed to objectivity and scholarly detachment, and yet which was overwhelmingly focused on teaching the histories and cultures of Europe. Faculties attacked Black Studies for its questionable validity as an academic discipline. Critics argued that Black Studies was political, not academic, and that it was mostly about psychology and self-esteem, calling it even an effort to boost the collective Black psyche by glorifying Black history. Some even argued that Black Studies was reverse racism. I note and underscore that faculty opposition in this late 1960s story, because interestingly, many administrators in those days were more inclined to negotiate with students to realign the university's mission with the shifting demographics and social developments in the United States. Today, it tends to be administrators rather than faculties that are drivers of conservative stances and sources of greater criticism of student protest. Many faculties around the country boisterously and vigorously opposed the creation of Black Studies programs, especially when Black Studies took the form of a department, which is stronger and more autonomous than programs and centers. Indeed, your own unit here, which is celebrating its 55th anniversary, institutionalized at an early point as a department. This was precisely the form students desired. The staying power at the University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee's Department of African and African Diaspora Studies proves the savvy of students who push for departments rather than programs. Indeed, departmentalization was a key demand of the nationwide Black student movement. Yet on many campuses, when students went on strike, took over buildings, or staged another type of protest, administrators called in the police or adamantly refused to negotiate over the demand for a department. But the students ultimately won some important victories, setting the stage for the emergence and ultimate flowering of the discipline. Following the successes of student protest on many campuses and the creation of Black Studies departments, a long period of stasis and retrenchment set in. Many administrators likely hoped that Black Studies would turn out to be a temporary fad and simply fade away. Others more aggressively starved it of resources and used the tenure process to weed out more activist-oriented scholars. In some respects, this was a period of disciplining Black Studies. It would have to conform to standard academic practices or disappear. Interestingly, In contrast to the widespread notion that Black studies was an academic outsider and somehow anti-intellectual, the field has become an intellectual giant, producing world-class scholarship and sparking innovations that have reverberated across the humanities and social sciences. A few examples include the idea of interdisciplinarity itself. 50 years ago, interdisciplinarity was seen as a rejection of the esteemed methods and the knowledge base of the established disciplines. It was widely assailed as watering down education and potentially leading to a hodgepodge of learning that added up to little. Today, in dramatic contrast, interdisciplinarity is embraced across both undergraduate and graduate curricula and programming. It's recognized as a critical approach in the generation of new knowledge. Indeed, the overriding concept of my own university's undergraduate curriculum is, quote, interdisciplinary thinking for a complex world. It's described this way. College graduates today face an increasingly complex world filled with challenges and opportunities. New information technologies produce torrents of data that require thoughtful analysis and interpretation. Shifting demographics and political realities inspire novel forms of artistic expression, but also ignite intercultural conflict. And emerging questions about how we as a species should live in sustainable relationship with other natural systems on our planet and beyond increasingly demand our attention. Such interlocking questions and concerns animated Black studies from its inception, but even more so in the 1970s and 1980s as newer innovations and developments around gender, class, sexuality, and the environment continuously reshaped the field. I want to give you other examples of the sway and hold of interdisciplinarity at universities nationwide, but there are simply too many at every institution, and my time is limited. But to suffice it to say, on the matter of bringing an interdisciplinary lens to the study of human life and the planet, Black studies was ahead of its time. Likewise, the concept of intersectionality or interlocking oppressions, which grew out of the Black feminist turn in Black studies, has been enormously influential in higher education and beyond. The concept of intersectionality has pushed a wide array of scholars, including sociologists, historians, literary scholars, psychologists, and others, to embrace a complex understanding of the interplay between race, class, gender, sexuality, age, nationality, and religion, in analyzing both personal identity and social experience. Intersectionality is today commonplace across the academy, but we often forget its origins in Black studies and gender studies. Now let's fast forward to our own time. On many campuses, Black studies has become an entrenched part of the academic status quo. It's rarely controversial now to have courses that delve into the history, politics, or culture of Black and brown people in the United States. But as Joan Prince, the longtime top administrator at UWM, who earned 4 degrees at this institution, once observed, the university is a microcosm of the larger society. Quote, everything that was happening outside of the institution, she noted, was brought into the institution. Her insight proved accurate during the first Trump administration and remains so today, in the early months of his second term in the White House. Interestingly, it's been the public-facing Black Studies initiatives, as well as its trickle-down effects on K-12 education, that first sparked notoriety in this current wave of backlash. When the New York Times published the 1619 Project to commemorate the 400 years of Black history and the colonies that eventually became the United States, it unleashed caustic, vitriolic, and frenzied attacks. The criticism began with senior, mostly white historians complaining about the accuracy of Nicole Hannah-Jones' interpretation of the Revolutionary War and the role of slavery in the founding of the United States. By the fall of 2020, after months of protests that brought a multiracial tide of millions into the streets against police brutality and racism, Trump added to the attack against the 1619 Project with what he described as critical race theory. Christopher Rufo, a right-wing operative who evidently was outraged by an anti-bias training that a friend forwarded to him, came up with the idea to assail various types to assail various types of affirmative action and a huge host of diversity initiatives by targeting the little known and understood acronym DEI. To many, DEI came across as corporate or from on high, and in this sense pushed conspiratorial buttons. The right has come to mobilize DEI as a code word or dog whistle meant to signal a benefit for Black people. Vilifying DEI is thus part of a long tradition of racial scapegoating. Rufo recommended mobilizing this term to sow resentment and confusion at what the educational establishment was supposedly doing to American children. The widespread feeling of powerlessness during the COVID pandemic accelerated these fears and anxieties. In the months before the 2020 election, Trump declared that critical race theory, the 1619 Project, and the crusade against American history is toxic propaganda, ideological poison that, if not removed, will dissolve the civic bonds that tie us together. It will destroy our country, he said. The only path to national unity, he continued, is through our shared identity as Americans. That is why it is so urgent that we restore patriotic education to our schools. Of course, we know DEI is the most patriotic education. The first Trump administration foreshadowed what we now face. There should be no surprise at the breadth of the attacks. He showed his hand in the first administration, and more recently via the extremist Project 2025 handbook that surfaced during the election. Many earlier measures have led to today's executive orders trampling immigrant rights, civil rights, trans rights, and academic freedom. Since 2020, the attacks on the teaching of, or even discussion about, racism in U.S. history have swelled into efforts to legally ban or otherwise circumscribe curricula that examine the history of racial oppression and exploitation, and or theoretical fields of study, including Black queer studies and Black feminism. In the last several years, 44 states have introduced bills or taken other steps that would restrict teaching critical race theory or limit how teachers can discuss racism and sexism. 18 states have imposed these bans and restrictions. As part of his tirade against the 1619 Project, Trump issued an executive order creating a commission to, quote, better enable a rising generation to understand the history and principles of the founding of the United States in 1776. At the heart of this effort is the reinterpretation of slavery and race in American life. Trump's executive order read, quote, the recent attacks on our founding have highlighted America's history related to race. These one-sided and divisive accounts too often ignore or fail to properly honor and recollect the great legacy of the American national experience, our country's valiant and successful effort to shake off the curse of slavery and to use the lessons of that struggle to guide our work toward equal rights for all citizens in the present. We have been bombarded by a deluge of executive orders since the newest administration assumed office last month, including the January 21st executive order called Ending Illegal Discrimination and Restoring Merit-Based Opportunity. Their intent has been to intimidate, disorient, and overwhelm ordinary citizens. Under the false claim of winning by a landslide, the Trump administration has forcefully attacked federal employment and the public sector writ large, including federal grant-making to universities, medical research, and the arts. The president has moved to install his unqualified allies to lead the FBI, Homeland Security, and the military. His claim to eliminate so-called wokeism in the military actually looks more like firing Black leaders and overturning any attempt at coming to terms with the true history of this country. He replaced the Black head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General C.Q. Brown, allegedly for his frank commentary about the role of race and racism in his own life in the aftermath of the murder of George Floyd. And yet the general's words that Black and white Americans live in two worlds, each with their own perspectives and views, were so basic and indisputable. According to a recent document, a list of trigger words used to flag applications for federal funding include activism, advocacy, barrier, biased, culture, disabled, discrimination, diverse, inclusion, equality, gender, implicit, inclusion, minority, political, race, ethnicity, and victim. This is an index of key terms in the 20th century. Trump may say he's trying to roll back terms that seem unfamiliar to many Americans, like DEI, wokeism, and gender ideology, but he's actually trying to unravel the federal government, roll back progress, equality, and anti-discrimination law. Strikingly, incoming Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, refuses to even say that teaching African American history is still legal. But this trickery is planned and intentional. Indeed, she's also seeking to abolish the department that she's nominated to lead. In addition to the January 21st EO, the administration issued a Dear Colleague letter on February 14th, which contends that any consideration of race in campus policies and practices is illegal, including in hiring, administrative support, and all other aspects of student, academic, and campus life. The letter also took aim at a host of campus strategies adopted in recent years to reach more diverse applicants and retain minority students, including race-based scholarships, affinity group housing and graduation ceremonies, and optional standardized testing policies. The February 4th letter gave higher ed leaders 2 weeks to slash services or policies that fly in the face of the administration's interpretation of the law. Otherwise, they risk losing federal funding. Todd Wolfson, president of the American Association of University Professors, described the letter as, quote, a deep political intrusion into the operations of higher education institutions that must be responded to with absolute conviction and force. This is the critical question we now face. How will university leaders respond? Anxiety is radiating through the higher ed sector as colleges decide how to respond to the directive to eliminate race-conscious practices and programming. A new determination to fight and resist compliance with these anti-DEI initiatives is gaining momentum. I think it's important to take note of these efforts and amplify their voices of dissent. 24 law professors authored a recent memo that acts as a rebuke and rebuttal to the administration's January anti-DEI executive order and the subsequent February letter. The legal scholars argue that despite the bluster, nothing in the executive order or letter requires the end of DEI policies. The exec order, quote, does not prevent state or local governments, federal contractors, or federally funded state and local educational agencies or institutions of higher education from engaging in First Amendment protected speech. This also means that the EEO does not prohibit universities from using their own voice to proudly proclaim their commitment to egalitarian values like diversity, equity, and inclusion. The letter by law professors is pitched at reassuring universities that they may continue to employ terms like diversity, equity, and inclusion on university websites and publications. Universities may also communicate their egalitarian-oriented values by, for example, posting BLM banners on campus, hanging pride flags in the student center, or simply reiterating such messages as Black Lives Matter, Trans Lives Matter, Palestinian Lives Matter, anti-Semitism is unwelcome here, against Asian hate, or any other slogan that cultivates an academic environment in which all students belong. In short, the lawyers contend nothing about African American studies, gender studies, Jewish studies, Chicano studies, Asian American studies, indigenous studies, Russian studies, or any other field program or academic department focused on a particular group runs foul of the Trump administration's January 21st executive order on DEI. According to these scholars, the reality is that the DEI initiatives promote the egalitarian ideals that animate federal civil rights laws. In this sense, DEI is precisely the patriotism we need. By helping institutions cultivate academic environments free from bias, stigma, or harassment, DEI initiatives better position universities to fulfill their academic mission to pursue truth and knowledge for the common good, which requires the free exchange and critical evaluation of competing ideas. Most relevant for present purposes, none of the DEI initiatives under discussion involve classification by race, which the Supreme Court has disallowed. For that reason, these law professors strongly conclude these DEI initiatives are not legally suspect. A recent memo by the Attorney Generals of Illinois and Massachusetts also underscores this point. They aver that none of the current DEI policies and practices violate the Constitution. Let's just hope that our judicial branch agrees and remains faithful to the Constitution. It seems clear that one goal of the attack on DEI is to continue the right's assault on affirmative action. But it's important to understand that their real goal goes much farther than that. They want to undercut anti-discrimination law more broadly by overturning anti-discrimination protections in the workplace, higher ed, and elsewhere. So please be on guard that this present-day attack is very broad in its targets. It aims to roll back decades of social policymaking with civil rights protection, Medicaid, and Social Security in its crosshairs. Thankfully, we have Black Studies to gird us and help us prepare for the struggle ahead. Born of struggle, Black Studies has long had in its DNA the task of dissecting and challenging power. We need that inclination now more than ever, including here in Milwaukee. And that's why the strength and longevity of this department, the Department of African and African Diaspora Studies, is so important. Your work plays a vital role in maintaining Black Studies scholarship and teaching in and about the Midwest. The Midwest has seen major social, political, and economic change over the last few decades. Thanks to gerrymandering and other factors, the political climate in the Midwest has moved away from competitive elections toward a Republican-dominated and electoral arena. Moreover, the Rust Belt has been devastated by neoliberal policies and global economic restructuring, which have left in their wake addiction, unemployment, and despair. We need abundant antidotes to these crises, but on the intellectual and educational end, we need Black Studies now more than ever. Historically, its function has been to diagnose our inequalities and afflictions and move us toward freedom and justice. Black Studies is grounded in exploring Black identity and culture, but it also has tools to help us understand new technology, the impacts of changing demographics, including the recent wave of African immigration to the United States, the climate crisis here at home and in the global South. This just scratches the surface of what we do. My main idea is that as the needs of our society evolve, the academy must also keep pace. One promising initiative that stems from a university in my city, the University of Illinois at Chicago, is the Black Midwest Initiative, and I now understand that a member of this department is also a participant in that important initiative. Launched after Trump's first victory, it spoke back at the media obsession with an aggrieved white working class and sought to correct the depiction of the US working class as multiracial and largely female rather than the archetypical white male as if we were actually living in the 1950s. While the presidential election of 2016 brought renewed attention to the conditions of Middle America, the national discourse that accompanied the election largely marginalized the circumstances of Black people living in the region. Yet research indicates that Black Americans have been among the groups hardest hit by the deindustrialization and accompanying economic decline and population loss that have become so synonymous with the Midwest. Far too often, it is not until a crisis forces intervention, such as in Flint or Ferguson, that significant attention is paid to Black Midwestern communities under duress. But Black Studies programs in the Midwest also contribute research and teaching about the extraordinary contributions of Black people in the region. I'll give you a couple of examples to indicate that some of the research on the region which illustrates the important work being done in Black Studies. The recent digital history project called the Colored Conventions Project documents a national fight for rights, strong communities, and abolition in the 19th century. In the 20th century, the Great Migration transformed the politics and culture of the Midwest. Black Southerners anchored the great wave of 20th century industrialization, helping to build the labor movement, strong families, churches, and communities. The 2023 book, Continually Working, Black Women, Community Intellectualism, and Economic Justice in Postwar Milwaukee by Crystal Morton, describes decades of activism and leadership by Black women in this city. And this is not just an urban story. We know from Eric McDuffie's recent book called The Second Battle for Africa, Garveyism, the U.S. Black Heartland, and Global Black Freedom, that the movement for Black freedom and sovereignty led by Marcus Garvey flourished in the Midwest, including in rural areas. In closing, instead of being a divisive field without merit, Black studies has enabled merit to actually have greater meaning in higher education. Ethnic and gender studies, more broadly, have helped to create a more equal playing field in the academy as new voices, new questions, and new approaches to research strengthen and advance learning for all. We often hear that the future is STEM, rather than the smaller academic units that nurture critical thinking skills. But we cannot let this happen. As our current crisis of governance indicates, we need an educated, critically conscious citizenry and electorate now more than ever. Congratulations on your 55th anniversary. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, wow. I hope everybody is fired up and thinking about our what our world is now and what our roles are in the future as well. And I'm glad that we have so many students here, because I know it's cliche about, you know, the children are the future. You guys aren't children, but you are the future. So I think it's very important to remember our past and think about where we are now. So just thank you again for your keynote address, Dr. Biondi. All right, speaking of students of the past, we are now moving into a time where we have former students and alumni of our courses to come forward so that we can have a panel discussion. So where are my panelists? Come forward, come forth. Just sit anywhere we don't have a designated seating chart. We got no seating charts, so sit wherever you want to. And I think there's just a few mics, so we can move those around as needed. Is there one more? All right. All right now. Okay. So today we will have our panelists who took courses in our department and who have gone out into the world to speak briefly about the ways that their experience with the department has shaped their lives and careers. So I'll just name everyone, and then I'll give everyone a chance to, you know, have a few minutes to speak about your experience, what you learned, what you're doing now, and how your time with the department has shaped your work and lives. So we have Lilo Allen. She took 4 AADS classes, though she was a communications major. Raise your hand, Lilo.
Hi, everybody.
All right, Gerard Blanks, who is an AADS major, finished his bachelor's degree in 2014. Raise your hand. We have Kristen Jones, who has a psychology BA, but she was also an AADS minor and completed her degree in 2018. Frederick Patillo, who is a Bachelor in Business Administration, and he also had an AADS minor, just completed 2024. And finally, we have Nikki Young-Todd, who was an AADS major who completed her degree. And this is right, 2000. Wow, okay, that's a deep cut. All right, so I'll let you all have a few minutes each. You can pass those around to just share with the audience here today what your experience was.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I had to write mine down because I didn't want to leave anything out. So yeah, like I just graduated this past December, but I've been taking courses probably for the better parts of the last 10 years. So answering a question that Dr. Wilson put forth, so minoring in the AADS opened up my understanding of what it means to be Black. So not just in the United States, but in the world. So whether it was Black reality, religious thoughts, urban history, or African American literature, each course taught and reinforced to me the strength, power, and resilience of the African, right? It taught me that no matter where I am in the world, that there is no greater power in being, right? In being proud. So I was surprised at the limited number of Blacks in my business classes, but being in my AADS classes, it really brought great pride and joy because that was, there I had my community. So I'm carrying with me throughout my career. I've been with the city for 20 years now in DPW operations, and the confidence that these courses reinforced was really integral and important with me gaining the various promotions throughout my career at the city. I've always heard that we are a great people, but to actually read and learn was an amazing experience. The griot, the permanence of racism, Octavia Butler, the Black migration, the traditional African religions, and traditions. Everywhere I look, I see remnants of those things around me. And my minor here at UWM in AADS did that. So thank you to the program, the faculty, and the staff. I really appreciate your support in my journey. So thank you.
Hello. All right. I did not write mine down, so I'm feeling a little ill-prepared, but I did think about it on the way here. In thinking about it, I had a lot to say, so I tried to narrow it down to the most important information here. I think, just generally speaking, as I think of my experience from a professional standpoint, it really did lead me into my career. It was my experience with Dr. Winkler. I was in her class. It was my second semester junior year, that time where people start asking, what are you doing? And I had no idea. And so in that class, we had a guest speaker who came in to talk about education and different roles in education, where he shared about school psychologists. And it was from that I then went on to grad school to become a school psychologist for MPS. So quite literally, he really led me into my career. But then, like from a broader standpoint, I thought of my greater takeaways and narrowed it down to three things. The first being curiosity. I think a lot of the things that I learned in these classes were things that I learned in K through 12, but that story was a lot different here. It was the truth here. It was things that wasn't taught to me or told to me in K through 12, stories that maybe there was information that was conveniently omitted. So it taught me to be curious, to learn more, to seek more information, and to think critically about the information that was being presented to me, which very much so came from my experience here. Outside of that, advocacy stood out as something that was very big. After learning the information and the reality of what things were, learning how to advocate for myself, but then also for and with others. So of course, in my role as a school psychologist, that was very important. Knowing that many voices are not sought out or heard, so trying to use different positions to amplify those voices and knowing that they're not always listened to and heard. And then last, just thinking of community, the importance of it, how to build it. I think in my experience as an Africology minor, I met a lot of great people, great students, but also great faculty that supported me through, quite honestly, a very challenging time in my life, but they cared about me as an individual and really pushed me to do my best. So to keep it short and concise, those are the things that stick out to me, although I really could go on for a long time here. But truly grateful for the experience. I think in hindsight, if I could do anything differently, I would have double majored. But I can't do that now. But very, very, very grateful for the opportunity.
Hey, my name is Gerard Blanks. I actually did double major. Now, I look back now, but at the time, oh man. So, if you don't mind, Nikki and I came into UWM at the same time, and we both left in 2000. She left with a degree, and I left with humble pie. Basically, I had gotten a letter from the school that said, you know what, it's not you, it's us. We'd like to break up. And I was like, fine, I'm ready to go anyway, right? And my mother, who actually has a PhD from UWM, would not let it go for a decade. And then I had my daughter in 2011, and I said, man, now feels like the time, right? And I had gotten passed up. I'd spent a decade in social work, and I had gotten passed up for a promotion. And I realized it was, at the time, you know, you needed a degree. And so, of course, my mother used that as motivation and really said, now's the time. And it was, but it was, it was the most difficult, I think, challenge of my life. And, you know, Dr. Winkler, Dr. Wilson really welcomed me with open arms. I don't know if you all remember, so I went back, I was in school when like we still used paper for things. So literally like the guide with all the classes, I know some of you are looking at me like, what are you talking about? It was this thick. So when I came back, we had to figure out like what was my status. And literally, I think Dr. Winkler said, you guys had to go look at, I forgot what it was called, but it was like an ancient scroll to find out where I was. And to my surprise, I had a lot of classes to take. The yoga and exercise classes I took back in the day didn't really count for much. So I had to start all over, and it was challenging because you got to understand, on one hand, I was very insecure being a grown man coming back in a class with kids. But on the other hand, I thought I knew a lot because I was a grown man.
They're not children. They're not children.
Oh, I'm sorry. With the young adults? Right. So on the other hand, I thought I knew a lot because I was grown, right? And I grew up in a household where words like DEI and critical race theory were commonplace, right? And the department, it allowed me to be humbled in a very compassionate way because there was just so much I didn't know. And so many of the professors just, again, took me under their wing and said, hey, you know, we appreciate you being here. You bring so much to the class, but, you know, there's a lot you have to learn. And so when I'm currently at Northwestern trying desperately to finish my dissertation, but I say that because I remember the first time I read Dr. Biondi's book. I had to do a report on her book in another class. And then I remember when I took one of her classes, I think it was a class on mass incarceration. And the work that I had done here prepared me for that. And when I say prepared me, it was that humbling to be able to go in and, again, be 10, 15, sometimes 20 years older than some of the other students and allow myself to learn from them, right? Allow for them to help teach me and really open myself up. So I really want to thank the department for all the work that it's done for all the students that have come through UWM, but particularly, again, the embrace, the amount of work it took for all the folks in the department to help me get to where I needed to be, help me graduate, help me get a graduate degree, and so on and so forth. So, and it's great to see all of you, because without your support, it doesn't make it to 55 years, and it certainly won't make it for another 55. So, thank you.
So I just have to say, on round one, Gerard was widely regarded as a brilliant person and student on campus, and I'm not saying that. He really was. So he had 2 rounds and 2 chances to influence his peers and others. So I'm grateful for that. We came in 1996 with, I think, Dr. Biko. That was your first year here too. Yeah, in 1996, it was called Africology. And I can tell you that brochure, I can tell you the definition, because I remember to this day. It was the normative and empirical inquiry into the life histories and prospects of people of primary African descent. I'm from Door County, Wisconsin. I was like, what? So I took the class, Black Reality. That was my first class. And I think you were both in that class with Dr. Mbalia that first semester, fall semester, with a lot of other people, right? Maybe Muhib, maybe, yeah, like others. And it is exactly what I thought it would be. It was a shockwave I needed, just as I was beginning to understand my power, I think you call it privilege, in the world. And I understood through many, many hours of learning, and I think you were like re-educating myself, or allowing myself to understand I had been lied to, things had been omitted, to your point. Like, it was that full process where I was like, now what do I do? And it was 4 years, and it did become one of my majors because it needed to be. It was more than education. I knew it was a personal mission. And one of our other instructors, Dr. Cecil Austin, taught, I took a lot of his classes, but he would always write an African proverb on do you remember that, on the blackboard, or the green board, or whatever it was in that room? The Mitchell, what was it? Mitchell, whatever number, that very famous lecture hall in Mitchell. And I remember one of the proverbs was, once the light crosses your path, you can no longer walk in darkness. And I took that really seriously. So I went on to, whatever I did, I wouldn't let people lie in my presence. In white spaces, it wasn't happening. And that was my responsibility, in order to say, you know what, I'm gonna take a step back. I'm gonna hold other people up who need to be held up, who have been held down too long, who haven't had the mic and the privilege and the power. I'm gonna step back. But when it's my turn, I'm gonna tell you the truth. And I will tell you everything, because I was so fortunate to be able to be here at that time, to learn what I learned, and to meet the people I met. And there are thoughts that resonate so clearly in my mind. Blacks in the US Constitution, taught by Walter Lanier. That one was in the Science Building. But that's where we started reading Derek Bell, Faces at the Bottom of the Well. That's where we started understanding critical race theory. And the one thing I'll say is that the people who are propagating hate and ignorance, they have no idea what critical race theory is. So that's our advantage, right? Because we do. And if they have a superficial understanding and they're ready to start there, at least they're showing us who they are, and now we can have a fair fight. And that's where, I think that's the one maybe silver lining in what's going on right now, is that we've been ready, but now they're ready to show us who they are. It's not insidious, it's not concealed, and now we can really do this. And that's why I do feel energized. I work for David Crawley. When I see public housing projects, I don't think of just brick and mortar. You know, I've been taught the history. There Are No Children Here by Alex Kotlowitz. I remember that very clearly from one of my Africology classes. You can't disappear, there are children who aren't allowed to be children because of the conditions they're living in. These are endearing, systematic inequities and inequalities that we have to address, and I feel so privileged to have the information to address them. So, thank you.
That was beautiful. There we go. Hi, everybody. I also did not write down what I wanted to say, but I have 3 major points that I want to hit on. The impact of taking, it was also called Africology when I was here. I graduated in 2017. From a global perspective, like positioning, it helped me understand my position as a Black person, not just a Black woman in Milwaukee, but in the world. What does it mean to be Black in spaces outside of what I'm used to? It completely shattered my idea of my responsibility as a Black person. Taking those classes gave me the language that I needed to describe my experiences just on this campus. I went from a high school that was majority Black and Hmong to then being thrown into a predominantly white institution and being microaggressed as soon as I walk in the class, and not understanding what that was, but understanding that I feel uncomfortable because the professor thought my name was LaToya because I was the only Black student in the class. And I'm like, nope, that's not me. And not having the language to say, hey, that's not right. You know what I mean? It seems small, but those little things, they get thrown into your backpack as you're walking around. And you feel a sense of heaviness when you don't feel seen or respected or just understood, right? As a person of color, as a Black person on campus, but taking these classes made me understand my role, but also the role of white folks and non-Black folks. And it really gave me the language to understand that just not being racist is not enough. You have to actively be anti-racist, and I believe I learned that in your class, Erin. And as soon as I heard that, it shifted my brain chemistry. Like, oh, you're right. Y'all could do more. We can do more. And even just back to global, being exposed to so many other cultures within the diaspora and seeing the community, how important it was, the collaboration, and honestly, it had a ripple effect. So I started my business here on campus. So I co-founded the Brownsville Collective. So we're a collaborative. We have over 30 different Black and brown-owned brands, mostly local from Milwaukee, but that space does not happen without me attending these classes and understanding what true collaboration is, what true community is. And it was sort of a butterfly effect, right? Like, you don't know a lot of the things that you don't know, and taking those courses really opened up my mind. And just also, again, the necessity of needing to be seen as you matriculate through all this mess, this minutia of not only having, you got homework due, you got politics are happening, and Mike Brown happened when I was on campus. And getting that email from your professor, you don't have to come to class today. I get it if you don't want to. You don't got to take this test this week. I get it if you don't have the capacity to. I cannot tell you like how amazing it felt to feel seen and to feel cared for by my academic, professors and community that we curated in these classrooms. It felt more than just, I'm going to class. We had these little communities that we created and we carried along with us well after graduation. Like, some of these are the homies. We didn't go to school at the same time, but I understand that the relationships that I've built, And a lot of the connections that I've made are people that have gone through these classes that have also had their eyes widened and open. And like I said, where I'm at today, running, my business will be 10 years old in November. That doesn't happen without me going to class here and popping up a table in the Union selling earrings, you know what I mean? But that all came from going to these classes and feeling seen, heard, respected. So thank you so much for everything that you guys do. Like, your work is amazing. And I'm so glad that I was able to participate today. Thank you.
Thank you to all our panelists, and I'm just so proud of like what everybody here on the stage has gone on to do and what you're going to do in the future, and I'm so happy that you were all able to join us today and to share with everyone here. So again, another round of applause for our panelists. All right. All right. Next, we have a performance from the Ko-Thi Dance Company. The Ko-Thi Dance Company is also celebrating their 55th year. Ko-Thi preserves, teaches, documents, interprets, and performs dance and music rooted in the cultures of the African diaspora, and has continually diversified its programming to incorporate ongoing national, economic, and audience evolution without sacrificing the mission of inspiring our community to celebrate themselves and others through the present-day interpretation of ancient and contemporary African dance and music. And I think I've taken some classes with you at the Milwaukee Rep. Yes. It was African dance. It was like aerobic African dance, and it near killed me. So. I was almost not here today. All right, do you guys need any help with this? Okay, good. Great.
How we doing? You good?
Oh, it is on. All right. So for those of you who are in my classes, you're going to have to do that in class. No. Thank you, Ko-Thi Dance Company. Woo! They're longtime friends of the department since we were born together. All right. I want to thank everyone for, wait, no, hold on. I'm skipping ahead. Before we end, I want to thank everyone for attending. I want to thank all our presenters, all the people who are exhibiting, and I'll get to that in a second, and our keynote speaker. She had to leave, but we're very appreciative of her remarks and for her filling in the last minute as well. And then also we're thanking David Crowley and Chancellor Mark Money. But I also want to give a moment to thank our co-sponsors who helped to make this event possible. Most especially to Community Empowerment and Institutional Inclusivity. Also to Africology Now. Do we have any Africology Now representatives here? Raise your hand back there. Woo! We're also sponsored by the College of Letters and Science, the History Department, Linguistics, Sociology, the Center for Student Experience and Talent, Latin American, Caribbean, and U.S. Latinx Studies, as well as Urban Studies. Thank you. I don't know if we have any representatives of those departments and programs here. Our program is concluding, but I would be remiss if I did not let you know that we also have some current students who are exhibiting their work, projects they did for AADS courses all around in the back of this auditorium. So please check out those exhibits, and I think the people the students who created them might be near them. I don't know if you're all sitting down now. But we have a project by Kasim Alexander about African-American quilting traditions, Jennifer Gregorich, who did images of Black Germans in German media, Cam Rabon, who is working with Dr. St. Jacques on Living for the City project, and we see these panels here that are part of that project. Conan Lee, who is working on, who has a project on fighting against intact busing, and Ali Tries, I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. Ali, yes, is doing work on newspapers and newspaper publishing. And I think that's about it. I want to thank everyone. I want to thank Lynn, who has helped, who is our program associate, who has put together everything and helped coordinate so well. Give a hand to Lynn in the back. You have to raise your hand. And our department chair, Kent Redding. So again, we now have some refreshments available. Feel free to mingle. Have those refreshments. I think there's a bar, but you have to pay for that. That's not free, guys. And so we're looking forward to another 55 years. Thank you all for coming.